Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Esther Jacobs, and she is a world-famous entrepreneur, author of multiple books, appeared on TED Talk stages and many other locations, organized conferences of her own, and she was kicked out of her home country because she was traveling around too much. But coming up in the episode, we're going to look at how she's never planned anything in her life or business and how she just goes with the flow. The dangers of seeing future potential in hiring decisions, how being a resultant with intuitive knowing of what clients need before they ask is a good thing to be, and how she used to ignore her intuition and then learn to trust it 100%. So welcome, Esther.
Hi.
Yes, I'm so glad to see you. Haven't seen you for a few months, I don't think.
Well, not live, but we follow each other on Facebook. So it's like we see each other daily almost.
There you go. So you really don't plan anything in your business anymore?
No, I never have actually. So it's a really funny thing. When I was 16, a clairvoyant neighbor told me that, the earth was going to be destroyed at some point. And she said, well, you better enjoy it while it lasts. And that's why I never did a long study, never planned projects ahead, never did any big projects. And I've just been keeping on doing that, even though the earth is still there, luckily. But I think that was the start of short-term thinking. And I realized that a lot of my friends were planning things and they were, so focused that they didn't see the opportunities that came their way. And I've always been flexible enough to see and seize any opportunity that came my way.
Now, you said they were so focused they didn't see the opportunities, because that sounds backwards from how most entrepreneurs have been taught. We're supposed to focus, right?
I know, but a lot of my friends at that time weren't entrepreneurs. They were going, they were studying, doing like their business apprenticeship and getting into jobs and, planning for years ahead, moving on in the corporate structure. And they didn't see the opportunities that they could have seen if they were entrepreneurs and if they had entrepreneurial mentality.
What's one of the entrepreneurs that you saw in this time when you were starting out?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
What was one of the opportunities you noticed?
For example, in the late 1990s, the telecom world was changing a lot. And I found out about the callback services. So you bought like a card and it had all kinds of numbers for different countries, and you would call a number and then immediately you would receive a call back. And then you would have a phone line with a very cheap rate. And I was living in the Caribbean back then, and calls to Holland, like it was a Dutch colony. And there were a lot of companies that had to call Holland every day, and calls were 10 guilders a minute. And with this callback service, there were only maybe 1 or 2 guilders a minute. So everybody wanted to use this service, and I got a commission out of all the, the connections that I sold. So it only lasted like 2 years because then, the telecom market changed again. But it financed the anthropology study that I did at that time in Gainesville, in Florida. I did it just out of interest because I was traveling so much. And I wanted to learn more. And these things always happened in my life. So an opportunity presented itself. And I set up this telecom thing. And actually at the end, just before the market was changing again, I heard from a friend who worked at an ad agency in Curacao, the Caribbean island, that actually the local telecom company were going to lower their rates. They were preparing a campaign, and he was just telling me he was working on it. So at that point, I sold my agency, the commissions that I got and everything. And I even got some, I got some proceeds from that. And that ended, the monthly commissions, but otherwise they would have ended anyway. So things like that always happened. And, I never got rich. I never had a lot of money, but I've always had, enough money to do whatever I wanted to do.
So how could you said part of this was you're not overly focused on the future and making plans. Is there any other thing you think helps you be more aware of opportunities than most people?
I think a lot of people turn on their inspiration like switch when they go to a conference or when they read a book or they listen to a podcast. Like, okay, now I'll open my mind and I'll get inspired. And for me, the inspiration switch is always on. So I have to turn it off, I have to try to turn it off because there's so much input coming in. So I get inspiration and ideas when I'm doing nothing, just the people I meet, the things I read online. I'm not even looking for things, but I just see opportunities. And I think that might be the difference, to always be open instead of opening up your mind when you think opportunities are going to arise, because they usually present themselves when you least expect them, right? When you're taking a shower, when you're talking to somebody you don't even want to be talking to, or so yeah, I think that's the difference, to always have an open mind and to know that there's always opportunities all around you, and you just have to recognize them instead of searching for them.
Tell us more about that. You need to recognize it instead of searching, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs feel they have to find the next big business idea, and they go around trying to find it.
That works sometimes, but it's hard work, it's brainstorming and creating plans and whatever. And sometimes it works. But for example, 1.5 years ago, I was just browsing through Facebook and I saw this. I don't even think it was an ad. It was a post by somebody who said, oh, there's a repositioning cruise from Barcelona to Brazil for $154. 9 days, transatlantic, everything included, private room. So I saw it and I was like, oh, that's fun. And then I continued scrolling, and a lot of people saw it and didn't do anything. Some people saw it and thought, oh, I'm going to make the cruise. So a lot of nomads were actually on that cruise. But at that moment, I was just organizing my writing week in Mallorca. So I had to rent a villa and organize the restaurants and give people instructions on, the travel arrangements, and have to pay for everything and have to entertain people all day and give workshops and tell them, okay, we're going to have lunch now. Come over here, wait here, blah, blah, blah. So I felt like a tour guide almost. And then I thought, what if I would organize my next workshop on board this cruise?
Oh.
People would book the cruise, the food would be arranged, they couldn't leave the boat, And all I would have to do is present myself every day between 9 and 10, whatever, for the daily workshop. So I tested the idea on Facebook. I said, hey, how about going on a cruise with me? You pay this $154 and you pay me a few €100 for the daily workshops. What do you think? And then many people reacted. So I actually set up like a page in my shop, and within a few days 15 people booked the cruise. So I went on this cruise that a lot of people went on. Oh, party, nice. And I actually made money on the cruise, and I had a great time. And arriving in Brazil, everybody was so happy that I decided to also organize this workshop on the way back. I called it Cruise Your Business. So a few months later, the same boat went back to Europe. And again, I put it on Facebook. Again, 15 people showed up. And I was forced to stay in South America for those 3 months in between.
Oh, what a hardship.
Of course, yes. So I learned to dance tango in Argentina and things like that. And in the end, I made like $10,000, made a lot of people happy, had 2 very unique experiences, all because of this one Facebook post that many people saw. Most people didn't react at all. Some people thought the opportunity was to actually go on the cruise, which was something very special. And I turned it into something different by combining 2 ideas and seizing the moment and the opportunity in creating Cruise Your Business.
And you were able to do that because you hadn't planned your future out for years in advance, and you didn't have, you weren't, in an office where you had to be in one place, on many other things, I'm sure too. And you were flexible to change your original idea, right? Because originally you were going to do this workshop on an island.
True, and I still do the workshops on Mallorca, but this was just a different version. And actually, after those 2 cruises, now a lot of people are organizing workshops on board the cruises, and I didn't feel like doing it anymore. But then a few months ago, I found another great cruise from Barcelona to Buenos Aires. And it's going to be end of next year, November 2018. And I thought, let's post it on Facebook and see what happens. And I got 17 people again joining me who paid and registered 1.5 years in advance to have this unique trip to Buenos Aires. So I'm going to do another cruise ship business, even though I thought I wouldn't. Just the momentum came up, and so these things happen.
So part of this technique you have is that you put it out to your audience, either on Facebook or your email list, and see what ideas people resonate with. Yeah. And you probably put some ideas out where no one signs up.
True. Sometimes I have an idea and I'm very enthusiastic. I think this is, the next best thing. And I post it on Facebook and nobody reacts. And I'm like, what is wrong? Is it the date not right? The theme not right? But that's what's great about social media. You get immediate feedback. And the good thing also is a lot of people plan things and organize things, and they rent a space and they make a program and they create a website, and then nothing happens. The good thing about Facebook and social media, you post something, an idea, people like it, then you start crafting it. You ask them, would you like this week or that week? Do you want 3 days or 4 or 7 days? How about this price? And then you craft the workshop or the offer you have together with your audience. And by the time it's ready, you have some ambassadors, you have people who want to actually go through with it. And if you make a plan perfect before you launch it, then you spend a lot of time. You don't have this feedback from your audience, and it might not be the right topic or idea. So for me, this is something that grew. I never, thought of this, but it just seems to work.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So really what you're doing is you're selling the idea before you've finalized what the whole thing is, and you're co-creating it together with the people who are coming.
True. Yeah, that's it. And I have another tip for listeners. I see people who create a Facebook event and then somehow they don't get enough response and then they cancel it. And when you cancel a Facebook event, more people get to see the cancellation than got to see the actual announcement of the event. So everybody knows that Esther's event has been canceled. Why would you cancel it? If nobody registers, you don't need to notify anybody that the event's not going to take place. And if 2 people register, you notify those 2 people. Never cancel a Facebook event.
That's a great tip. And what do you do if you only do have only 2 people sign up and really you need 10 people to make the numbers work? How do you deal with that?
Sometimes I go with the 2 people because, they're really enthusiastic about the topic, and maybe it's a new idea for me and I can test it out, and then I can tell them you can bring a friend, or I make a special offer for the other, seats available. And sometimes, I create an event because I want to be at a certain location at a certain time. And then it's just nice if 2 people join me, and that will probably pay for my expenses. But most of the time it's very clear. It's either nobody or it's more than 10 people. So it very rarely happens that it's somewhere in between.
Cool. So a lot of this comes down to that you just go with the flow in your business.
And there's not really a difference between my business and my life. So I just go with the flow. And sometimes my life turns into a business, and sometimes my business turns into my life.
So what I want to ask is, people may be listening and saying, yeah, that sounds, I wish I had Esther's life or something similar. But I don't quite know how I can go with the flow. If you wanted to train someone, how could they go with the flow? What are some practical things they could do right now?
What do you mean if I wanted to train somebody?
So suppose there's someone who doesn't go with the flow but they want to, they get the benefit, right? What could they do to have more of that in their life?
Okay, I would advise that person to take little steps. So not to quit your job, leave your country, leave everything behind and go go with the flow. But for example, take a different route to your work every day. If you usually cycle to your work, take the subway. If you drive, walk, or share a car with somebody. So do something different and be open. Turn on that inspiration switch like you're going on holiday or going to a conference. have lunch with somebody every day that you don't know yet. It might be the person from the mailroom. It might be your cousin. It might be the cleaning lady. Somebody completely unexpected with a different life view. And talk to them, really talk to them about their passion, about your passion. And you will find that you are able to help them, and they will be able to help you with the things that you're dealing with or struggling with. And even if they won't help, they'll give you different perspectives. And I think inspiration is all about different perspectives. So if you do what you've always done, you will get what you always got. So you need to do things differently to get different results. And also failures, like what you feel as a failure, are just stepping stones to learning things. So don't be afraid to fail, and don't have a fixed idea of the outcome. Just, go with the flow. That's how I deal with it.
And what about being super busy? Because a lot of people feel they have to do a lot of things and work 16-hour days in order to succeed in their business. How does that relate to going with the flow?
Well, it doesn't leave much space for the unexpected, right? Or for inspiration or for fun. And I used to be like that. I used to work very, very hard, and I used to define myself by the results. I'm the no excuses lady, resultant, whatever. So I know exactly how you feel when you're in that position. You think, I don't have time to slow down. First, I need to do this and this and this and this. And then you just... what happened to me, I got into a car accident a few years ago, and I ended up with a whiplash. So I had to slow down. And it was not a matter of doing 10% less what I was trying to do before, and that caused even more stress. But I couldn't do anything. And I had to decide, when I felt a little bit better, the 10% of all the things I was doing before that were important enough to spend my, little energy on. And it took me years to get used to that. And now I work a lot less, and, I still get the same amount of things done. And a lot of things don't get done, and, nobody cares. So there is another way, but it's not a way of changing what you do right now and making it a little bit different. There has to be like a complete turnaround. And I hope for the listeners that it won't be an accident like I had, or a burnout, or something really serious, but that just one day you'll have an epiphany and think, hey, this is not what I really want. What I really want is to be open and to have the space inside myself and in my life for the people I love, for the things I really want to do. And it's not all about results. It's about the process and being in the moment and being happy.
Yeah, I certainly think paying attention to the joy we get in our businesses is as important as the profit. It's really nuts to have a business that's bad for your health and you don't enjoy. So,
and one thing that really helps is appreciation. Like, some people keep an appreciation journal that every morning you write down 3 things you're grateful for, and at the end of the day also. And there's also a great meditation from Headspace, and it's the appreciation pack, I think they call it. And those things really help me. You change your mindset by focusing on appreciation instead of focusing on your to-do list and, things you haven't achieved. You really have to focus on the things that are already there, not only for your business and not only for your personal growth and not only for your happiness, but just my business motto is work with what you have. There is already so many things out there that you can use and that you have. Don't focus on what you don't have, but focus on what you have and see what you can create with that.
That sounds a great way to be in your life and in your business. And I can see how that creates more space for opportunity. So
many people are waiting for something, they're waiting for the money or for the time or until the plan is finished, until they have a financer, whatever. But the time is now, see what you can do right now.
So let's just segue into being lucky, because you seem to be an incredibly lucky woman. You've traveled to hundreds of countries in some dangerous situations, never had any problems. You've had lots of business ideas and opportunities that you've talked about. How do you create being lucky?
I think it's It's a mindset, but it's also, I do think that I'm very lucky. You know, I was born in a good country, in a good family. I've had a lot of opportunities. But I see a lot of people from the same country with the same opportunities, you know, having a completely different life. And I also know some people who weren't born in those lucky circumstances who have created a wonderful life. So it's not the only thing. I think the other thing is the mindset, and knowing that everything you need is is already around you, and then seeing and seizing opportunities, like what I just said about the cruise. You know, many people saw this Facebook post about the cruise. Not many people recognized it for an opportunity, and even less people actually seized the opportunity. And that's the thing with many things in life. You might be walking to work or to an appointment and you see something really interesting, and then you say, oh, I can't think about that right now because I have to get to work. Whereas if you would stop and talk to that person or read the flyer or whatever inspires you, you're open to opportunity.
Do you think that's something someone could learn to do, to slow down enough to let the luck come in? Or
Yes, I think so. And to many of us, it's not really natural because we were raised in an environment where you have to be busy, right? If you ask your friends how you're doing, many people say, oh, I'm so busy. And it's like a status symbol because they're busy, they're doing their business, they're making money, they're wanted, they're important. But you have to also choose the context and the environment. So if you surround yourself with people who find other things important, or people who are looking for inspiration, who are developing themselves, who are doing things differently, then you create a different environment. So you decide what environment you want to be in, and what direction you want to grow. Do you want to do more, better, make more money, have more success? Or do you want to really live and grow and explore humanity and yourself, and, you know, things like that, and creativity, and meet other people who are doing the same thing? And that's a really big thing. And, you know, a lot of people talk about it, and I used to talk about it, and I didn't feel it the way I feel it right now. So I think I've grown in that direction after, you know, going on in the wrong direction for a long time.
So when you say pick your environment, does that mean the place that you live, or your friends, or the staff that are in your business, or what do you mean by environment?
Actually, all of that. For example, I help a lot of people who want to become location independent. So they're still stuck in a job in the Netherlands with, you know, the environment, making a lot of money, spending a lot of money, having little time, being busy. And some of them actually quit their job and then keep their expensive house and try to make a plan on how to become location independent. And they all find it very hard. And I advise them to move to, for example, Medellin or Bali, Indonesia for a while, to surround themselves with people who are already living that life. And it's cheaper and it's a lot easier. So when you want to make a change, sometimes it's easier to actually make that change before before you're ready, because then the circumstances will help you deal with it. And it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. It can be, a temporary thing. You can take a month of holiday from your work to go to a location where there's a lot of digital nomads, to be inspired and to think about what you could do. And that will work better than doing it in your usual environment.
Right, because by changing your environment, even if you only went to the next town over in the same country,
True.
You'd still be more open.
Yeah. And a funny example that somebody told me, a guy he was living in Spain. He wanted to move to London, but of course it was hard to find a job in London while living in Spain. So he changed his LinkedIn profile that it showed, I live in London. And then he started getting job offers. And when he finally moved to London, he had a job already. So you don't even have to change your environment. You can change your social media profile and invite things, your way. So there's different ways of doing it. But you have to change something if you want something to change. You have to start somewhere. You can't wait for change to arrive at your doorstep, because then you're not in control, then other people or other circumstances are taking control. You are giving them control of your life.
So I know you've hired a lot of people, assistants and all kinds of people in your different businesses. Tell us about the danger of seeing the future potential of the people you're hiring. Because that sounds like a good thing, right? To see someone's potential.
Yeah, I have a weird thing that when I meet people, I see their potential. So I see who they can be, their potential, their possibilities. And I really like to talk to people about, who they can become and about possibilities and things they might not have realized themselves. And I really see that in a person. But when you're hiring somebody, it's not the best thing, because I see what they can be, but they might not yet be that person, or they might not want to be that person, or they might not see themselves that way. And I'm really not a people person. So when I want to hire somebody and you say, oh yeah, I need work, I'm like, okay, here's work, and we'll have fun and let's do it. And then after a few weeks, you will hand me back the work like I have no idea, you were so enthusiastic, but then when I was by myself, I had no idea what to do. And then I'm very disappointed. And it happened to be many, many, many times that I am talking to people and I see this potential and we talk and they also feel this potential. And then I leave them alone and they're like back in their ordinary world, like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And they feel embarrassed and they don't want to tell me because I saw all this potential in them. And then, so I've been disappointed many times. And of course, I have to learn from that. So recently I hired a coach actually to help me hire somebody to go through the process. And what I learned is I just go by my intuition. Hey, I like you, you like me, you need work, I need somebody, here's the work. That was my hiring process. And now we went through multiple steps, to do some tests and even, personality tests, because I tend to hire people who are like me, but I don't need people who are like me. I need people who complement me and,
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot from that process, and now I have some great people working for me, and then it's actually fun to work with others.
So you mentioned hiring people that you like previously, and you felt that was intuitive. Is intuition the same as liking, or is there some difference there?
It's very difficult to make the distinction, because I've also met people who I intuitively didn't like, but practically should like, because they were doing good things, they were nice people. So, and also in love, you want to trust somebody, you want to, have this good feeling, even though your intuition might tell you that it might not be the right person. So that's why so many people don't dare to trust their intuition, because you never know when it's your intuition, when it's your fear, when it's your desire. All these little voices, they sound alike.
Yes, there can be a lot of little voices in the head. So
yes,
narrowing down which one's the intuition, which one's the emotion is definitely a good skill to do. And I think just by practicing and journaling the decisions we make using intuition or other means is one way to do that.
Yeah. And what I learned is, looking back, you often understand the situation better. So even if at that moment you hear two voices and you decide to go with this one, and then looking back, it turns out this one was right, somehow you knew all along. And by looking back, next time to trust more in your first hunch.
I think the other thing for me on that is the question I ask. If I ask myself, is this person going to be good for me to hire? That produces one intuitive answer. If I ask, will this person bring me profit and joy? It brings me a different answer. Because because someone might be good for my business because they're absolute disaster at doing the job, and they make me wake up to the fact haven't got my business organized and I wasn't clear in the hiring process, and all kinds of other benefits that might come from having a bad fit. I'm sure you've had that experience. You hire someone who wasn't good and you get a lot of good, benefits come from it.
Yeah, you learn from it. But you are very good at asking good questions. So it's really interesting to think about what question do you ask your intuition or the universe or whatever.
Yeah, because my intuition might have said, yes, it's good to hire Mary because she's going to give you a hell of a ride and make you grow your business 3 times in 2 years' time. But you're going to get a little frustrated while she's with you.
Yeah. And then at first you question, your intuition, because your intuition said, yes, hire her. And then, you have a lot of conflict and you think, oh, my intuition wasn't right. And then 3 years later, with all the extra profit, you look back and you understand what happened.
Yes.
So that's why we learn to trust our intuition more when we get older. I wish I would have known all the things I know right now when I was younger. But it's a process. You have to learn to trust yourself and other people and how things are related to each other. And I think just by the time we get it, we die. It's it's so unfair.
Well, you can always communicate with your older self, just invite her onto your spiritual advisory board and ask her for advice.
That's a good idea.
I was talking to Chris Reynolds, another location independent entrepreneur, and he has a 90-year-old version of himself on his spiritual advisory board that he talks to.
That is
great. Often when he's upset about some business thing that's not going right, and his older self, encourages him not to get so excited about stuff going wrong.
Because I know the other way around, like writing a letter to your younger self. I wish I would have known this, and it's also like a therapy thing, which is really powerful. But it doesn't change anything. But if you ask your older self to advise your current self, that is something that you could actually use and that might change your decisions or your experiences.
And you could have your future self write a letter to your current self, explaining how she achieved whatever goals that you currently have.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, yes. Always possible to communicate between our different selves. And I definitely have, when I was younger, I have memories of being, getting spiritual help. And I realize now it was me helping my younger self.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. So lots of opportunity there because time is not totally linear. There's definitely more flexibility in time than we recognize. So I noticed earlier you called yourself a resultant rather than a consultant, because you deliver results to your clients, right?
Yeah, I'm not a coach like who does multiple sessions, and I'm not a consultant who takes on a big project. I'm a resultant. So I do 1 or 2 sessions, mostly 1 only. And I just, I deliver results. And if you want me to hold your hand, and if you have excuses, then I'm not the right person. I'm the no excuses lady, and I don't have patience. So the clients auto-select themselves, and sometimes I get an offer from somebody who says, my company pays for like 10 coaching sessions. Can I do that with you? And of course, in the beginning, I made a mistake. I thought, okay, 10 sessions and you get paid and it's the same person. And so a few times I said yes, and I regretted it after the second session, because what else are you going to talk about? If you don't get it after the first or the second session, then 10 or 20 sessions are not going to change anything.
And then when these clients come to you, do you get an intuitive knowing as to how to solve their issues? Or tell us about how your intuition plays into this.
Well, I don't think about these things. I know I can help anybody with anything. I can make any situation or plan better than it is before people come to me. So that's the trust that I have. And then when we have a session, sometimes people want to send me things ahead and want me to read things. I usually don't. Just sit down and talk to them, and whatever they say at that moment is what they need most at that moment. And then, they might tell me they want advice on writing a book, and then after 5 minutes we might go in a completely different direction and they end up very happy. I don't plan anything. I just I empty myself and I'm completely there for that person for that hour or whatever the time is. And I'm very practical and also intuitive, and I never called it that. I just called it experience or whatever, but I'm very intuitive. So sometimes people ask for one thing and they need another thing. Same with companies hiring me for presentation. They might ask for one thing and they might need another thing. So I just completely empty myself and give my best for the situation. And usually it ends up being exactly what they needed.
I know different people get their intuition in different ways. You know, maybe they hear words or ideas come in their head. What ways do you get these intuitive messages?
I think it's more feeling. And also what I noticed when something is not in flow, it feels like you're stretching a rubber band, you know, you can do it and you can stretch it more and more, but it gets more and more difficult. Or like walking in syrup, you know, that feeling that you're working really hard and you hardly get ahead. On the other hand, when you're on the right track, then like all the doors open, all the lights turn to green, and feels like effortless. So I think I use that in conversations or sessions as well, that if something feels like really slow and difficult and I switch the topic or the direction and then suddenly it starts moving again, that's what I go by.
That is a great skill to have, because that lets you navigate your life with ease.
I think I never thought about it, but I think that's it. I learned to recognize when things get really syrupy, that's not the right direction. And believe me, I've worked, you know, I've stretched the rubber band and I've walked in the syrup and to show everybody that I could, you know, I have a lot of strength and I could do it, but it never leads to anything. And then when you finally let go and the rubber band returns to its original shape and you go in a different direction and everything is easy, it's like, oh, you just learn by experience. And I think everybody has this experience, but I started to recognize it at some point and then learn from previous feelings and experiences and started applying not only to my own life, but also to the people and the organizations that I help.
And you also, I think, apply this when you travel. You've traveled to more than 100 countries. You've done it as a solo traveler. You know, you're a woman, which a lot of women listening may be like, I could never travel alone to countries X, Y, and Z. It's too dangerous. And you didn't just travel to these countries. You actually were in situations that maybe were a little dangerous themselves. So
yeah, I've been in all kinds of situations, you know, before internet, without accommodation, without money, without plan, you know, really weird things happen. And for me, this proved that it's not just luck, but also intuition. Sometimes, you know, a really good person would invite me to their home and everything seemed perfect. It was a friend of a friend and everything seemed like a great situation and it just didn't feel good and I wouldn't do it. Now, I don't know what would have happened, but other times I was in the weirdest places and then a really weird person would invite me to their house and it would feel good and I would do it and I would have a great time. I remember in the Dominican Republic, I was like 20 something and I arrived at night in Santo Domingo and I went to like a small hotel and there was nothing there and it was dark and I wanted to walk on the beach. So I walked on the beach by myself at night, of course, really stupid idea. And I saw a light further on. So I walked to the light and it was kind of a bar. So there were people there and I talked to them and the women were really friendly. The men were a bit weird. And after 3 hours, I found out I was in a brothel, of course, you know. And I realized, this might not be the smartest thing to do. So maybe I should go back. At the moment I wanted to leave, there were gunshots outside. So there was like a gunfight or whatever. So people said, you better stay. So I stayed for a little while. Then the gunfight ended. I walked back to my hotel. Nothing happened. But then I realized maybe the next time I shouldn't go walking in the dark in the middle of the night by myself. So that's how I learn things. Not because everybody tells you shouldn't do them, but because I found out.
That sounds quite exciting.
Yeah.
But it's good that you could feel where the flow was good and where it wasn't.
Yeah, and another thing is a lot of people are guided by fear. So I have a lot of friends who go to a new place, and they first thing they check is the locks on the door, and they live in fear. And I don't think about bad things that can happen. I know things can happen, but I don't focus on them, and that makes me feel free. And of course you have to be reasonable, and you don't take any risks that you shouldn't take, but living in fear is a different mindset. And you notice also when somebody walks around in a strange city and they don't feel at ease, they're an easy target, because you see that they don't feel confident, and they're a little bit lost and disoriented. And when you walk around with confidence, I don't have any sense of direction, so I get lost. Even in a village in Bolivia, which was just one square with 4 streets, I get lost. But I pretend to always know where I'm going. So people must have seen me walking each of those 4 streets like very confident. And then 2 minutes later, I would pass again, looking for my hotel. I couldn't find my hotel anymore. But
at least
also,
there wasn't a gunfight,
Yeah, not that time. And also people say, you're a blonde woman. Don't you get problems with men and whatever? And I think, for example, in South America, that's my personal interpretation. I don't know if it's true, that men would rather be seen talking to you than pull you into an alley and do whatever bad thing, because it's a macho culture. So men want to talk to me, and sometimes I talk to them, and sometimes I don't. And I'm not afraid. I don't walk around in fear. I just walk around open to the environment, to meet people, to learn things, to have experiences. And like I said, nothing bad ever happened to me. And I know people have other experiences, and that's horrible. And sometimes you can't avoid it, or you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But it's better, not living in fear and trying to enjoy things than not do things because something bad might happen. Something good might happen.
It could. And I think that the vibration we have, whether it's fear or being open or love or whatever you want to call it, people pick up on that. And particular criminal people are very good at, they're like predators. They're like lions in the jungle. They can tell where the vulnerable antelope are in the herd.
But there are also always good people. Like when I was really young, when I was 17, 18, traveling around by myself, there would always be good people saying, are you traveling alone by yourself? Don't you know it's dangerous? Why don't you come home with my family? Then at least you'll be safe. So I would have the good people picking me off the streets before the bad people could.
Well, this is an inspiration for people listening to. Maybe they're not going to travel to 100 countries, but they could try some things they haven't tried before and take a few little risks.
Start small, like what I said, take a different route to your work, go to the next town and pretend you're a tourist. Just it's opening your mind. You don't have to leave everything behind and put yourself in a completely new, potentially dangerous situation. Just start small and explore your own comfort zone, and make sure you get your inspiration switch turned on.
So have you always trusted your intuition this strongly, or have you had times when you didn't trust it as much?
I wish I could say yes, but you learn to trust it by ignoring it a few times and then looking back knowing that your intuition was right. For example, many years ago when the euro was introduced in the Netherlands, I collected all the leftover foreign coins for charity. And it was a big project. I raised 16 million euro without any expenses, without any experience. And of course, I was the new girl in the established charity world. And there were like many, big guys, famous, established, with big positions, big names. And they wanted to be part of my collection, or they were against my collection, or, everybody had a different opinion. But I thought, my intuition told me, these guys, it doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel good. But then my ratio told me, these guys have much more experience than you do. They're famous, they have well-established names, they know what they're doing. And, they just behave that weird because they have to get used to you. So take your time, work with them. And of course, years later, I found out that they robbed all the money and that they were trying to stop me from doing the collection, and they were doing all kinds of political, horrible things. So looking back, I know that my intuition was right. But at that moment, I tried to rationally like overrule it. And now I know that, you know, I shouldn't have done that, but I wouldn't have learned everything that I know right now if I hadn't had that experience.
And maybe people can relate to this with dating Mr. Wrong, which you told me earlier you dated a Mr. Wrong for a while and your
For
intuition was
7
knocking
years,
on the door.
actually. Yep.
7 years of your intuition knocking on your door. Esther, Esther.
Well, you know, of course, when we started off, I knew this wasn't a good idea, but everybody tells you don't date a Mr. Wrong. And I didn't want to listen to what everybody said. I just wanted to experience it for myself, because a Mr. Wrong is also a very exciting person. You know, they have very adventurous lives. They have 100% attention. So I wanted to experience this. And we actually had a very good time, and we actually fell in love. So then it turned into a relationship. And you know, you cannot really change somebody. They can adapt their behavior, but their essence is the same. And if somebody needs a lot of attention, the moment your attention goes elsewhere, they fall back into old habits. So many times my intuition told me, you know, something is not right. But I was in love with this guy. We had a relationship. He really wanted to be with me. We had like a good relationship. And he told me there's nothing to worry about, or he would even ridicule my intuition. And, you know, the choice at that moment was, you know, not believe him and listen to my intuition based on nothing. I had no proof. I had no facts. Or trust him with his, you know, his reasoning. And it sounded very reasonable. So many times I decided to trust him and, in fact, overrule my intuition again. And then at the end of the 7 years, when our lives were kind of, you know, floating apart, going in different directions, and we broke up, only after the breakup, I realized that I had been overruling my intuition for so many years and that I needed to recover. It took me 2 years to recover, to get back to myself, to trust my intuition again, because I wasn't aware that I was overruling it.
So what now you have all this understanding, what would you tell your younger self if she was hearing those intuitive messages? And maybe for some listeners who are hearing intuitive messages with their relationships or their business.
Well, I think the mistake that I made was with both the charity people and with the Mr. Wrong. I was trying to argue with them based on my intuition. Like, my intuition tells me this is not the right thing to do. And then they come up with all kinds of rational arguments. And then you have nothing to offer and you always lose. So keep your intuition to yourself and try to find rational arguments to support it. Then you can have a discussion. But don't tell people, I feel I need to do this because my intuition tells me. So I think that would have made the difference. Then I could have just told the guy, like, listen, we're taking some time apart, or I don't know what I would have done, but listen to your intuition and keep it to yourself and find some like rational things to support your decision.
Well, that's certainly a good piece of advice for your younger self. I'm hoping we can move to a world where people would respect other people's intuition. But
that would be good, yeah. But then people also do use it the other way around. Like, they don't want to do something because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone, or they don't want to work with somebody, or other reasons. And then they say, my intuition tells me not to do it. And then you can't argue with them because they say, my feeling, my intuition, even though you know that it's based on something else. So it works both ways.
Oh my goodness. So it sounds like you like using your intuition in your business these days. Why are you so proud to use it?
I'm not really aware of it, and I'm not really proud of it, but I realized that it's always been there, and I'm just giving it more space. And it's not like a spiritual side and a business side, but it's all integrated. It's all one thing. It's all me. And I make mistakes and I read my intuition wrong, or still, but many, many times that I did trust what I felt, and it turned out well. So intuition doesn't only warn you for bad things; it also points you in directions of, look at this again. This might be a good idea, or let's walk in that direction. Usually I go here. No, let's walk that street today, and then you meet somebody or see something that inspires you. So it's the little things. Intuition is not a big thing. It's the little things. And all those little things matter, both in business and privately.
I mean, I think they can make a big difference. I know that there's a billionaire, I think it's George Soros, George Soros. And when he's in a big trading position with millions of dollars on the line, when his back starts aching, he knows he needs to unwind the position and get out immediately.
Wow.
And that's his way of doing it. He's the guy who bet against the Bank of England when they were trying to break the exchange rate on the pound. So I think these little messages can make a lot of difference in our business.
I think what it all boils down to is get to know yourself. How you feel, how you work best, who you work best with, how you get inspiration, what makes you feel uncomfortable. And that's my biggest asset, that I really know who I am. I'm very confident in the things that I do because I choose the things that I'm good at. So, you won't see me doing anything that I don't feel confident about, except for tango dancing, actually, which is a new experience. But you can drop me anytime, anywhere in the world, without a phone, without money, without friends, and I'll make a living, I'll create a new life. That's what makes me confident, and that's what makes me me. And I think if you get to know yourself with your intuition, with your, the mistakes you make, with the experiences you have, then nothing bad can happen to you because you'll turn anything into a learning experience. And that's different for everybody. So your feeling about yourself will be different than my feeling, but you know yourself and I know myself. So, we can be whole people talking to each other instead of insecure people wanting something from each other and doing like energy stealing or political schemes. So I think that's what people should be looking for, to really get to know themselves and to find the best environment and context to be their full self.
And I've taken tango lessons, and one of the things I learned that was surprising to me is that, when you're dancing tango, you're doing, it's a complicated set of steps, but you're supposed to be staring in the other person's eyes, and you're supposed to stay a certain distance away from them, even though you're walking backwards and forwards and around and whatever. So you sort of have to feel their energy to know where the man or the male person in the partnership is going next. And the male needs to project that energy to his partner, so she has a clear message about where he's going to step before he steps it. Otherwise, you end up stepping on each other's toes.
It's all about connection and communication. Yeah. And there's a lot of dances. I've done some salsa as well, and it's really fun. But tango is about connection, and it's really about working with energy. And things become visible. If you, in real life, you can pretend to receive a message. But in tango, if you pretend to receive the message, you're doing something different than the leader wants you to do. So it's visible immediately.
It is fascinating. So I think that if every entrepreneur was able to openly use their intuition in their business, they would make more money, they would be less stressed, they'd be more happy, and perhaps more importantly, they make less stupid decisions. Because I think a lot of decisions where we hurt people in our businesses or hurt the environment or the planet come from not following our intuition, but maybe following fear or greed. So, and that's my mission to achieve that. But what will it take, in your view, to make business intuition used openly by every entrepreneur?
I think that what you're doing right now, asking different people, successful people, role models, interesting people, whatever, to talk about this different side of doing business and living that we usually don't talk about. We talk about it in one-on-one meetings, but not openly, because a lot of people are not ready for it, are not open for it, but more people than we think are interested in it. So I think what you're doing is great, to to peeling off a layer of the usual interviews and success stories, to look behind the scenes, what really happens, and to bring the spiritual and the ratio and the business sides together.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've done a whole bunch of these and I'm doing a whole bunch more. So, and I've just noticed behind you, you look like you have some Hindu deity dancing the tango. So,
well, this is my father's apartment. So this is his decoration, but he's actually dancing the tango on top of somebody else. So I don't think it's very spiritual.
Well, I think war and fighting actually are quite intuitive themselves. If you're in a battle, you have to react instantaneously to threats, and you can't do that with the rational mind.
True.
So there's a lot of intuition that happens in the military.
Yeah, and also that's
area.
what I noticed in Tango. If you're thinking, you're too slow. Your body reacts faster without thinking. So this, for me, it was a revelation. Like, there's so many learnings in dancing the tango, so many metaphors about what we just talked about today, and about life in general, about business. It's beautiful to look at it that way.
And I think that's true in business these days. But the speed of business is just increasing so fast. We can't do it all through the rational mind. I mean, still use the rational mind. It's a great tool. But here's intuition. It's another great tool to use as well.
True.
So,
yeah.
Great. Well, I've really enjoyed connecting with you and sharing with our audience all your wonderful experiences with intuition. If people want to find you online, how would they do that?
My website is estherjacobs.info, and it has a lot of tips and blogs and videos and like really good information. And of course in social media, I'm mostly Esther Jacobs, sometimes Esther Jacobs NL for the Netherlands. But just, Esther Jacobs, no excuses lady, and you'll probably find whatever you're looking for.
Or just go to your local Amazon store and find Esther Jacobs, or your local TEDx, and you'll probably find her speaking somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of videos out there. I do public speaking, like for conferences, meetups. I give workshops, retreats. I have about 22 books out right now, I think. But everything is on estherjacobs.info. And if you have any questions, send me a mail or a social media message, and I'm probably going to be able to help you, just in a few lines of advice or a link or whatever.
Fabulous. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for asking those great questions that I know you're famous for.